Hey there, my name's Oisin Lunny and welcome to Audio Talks, presented to you by Harman. And in this episode, we are going to be immersing ourselves in the surround sound of sports. What scale of event are we talking about today? Nothing less than the Olympic Games, my friends. Oh yes, and I am very honoured to be joined by a tag team of Olympic-level audio pioneers who will be lighting the flame of innovation, carrying the torch of technology and passing the baton of integration. Welcome to the podcast, Director of Broadcast and Content in Europe at the mighty Dolby, Anaïs Libolt. Welcome, Anaïs.
Thank you. Hi.
Bonjour. And welcome to the podcast, Broadcast Sound Design and Audio Manager at Olympic Broadcasting Services, Nuno Duarte.
Hi, hello, everybody.
Great to see you, Nuno. So thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to start this podcast by saying Dolby is truly a household name. It's been around for as long as any of us have been around, for sure. It even made it to the rockumentary Spinal Tap, which is the pinnacle of success in my book. And almost everyone on the planet surely must know about the Olympics and what they are. But Olympic Broadcast Services is less of a household name. So, Nuno, I'd like to come to your good self first. Could you explain to our listeners what Olympic Broadcasting Services does and tell us a bit about your role at OBS?
So, Olympic Broadcast Services is a IOC, International Olympic Committee company, that's responsible for all the sports coverage and the open and closing ceremony of all the Olympic Games, summer and winter. So we do the coverage, audio and video, for all TV stations. So then we provide the signal to all the media right holders. This to avoid that every TV station have to do the coverage by themselves. So we do a global coverage that we call it host broadcast.
Phenomenal. And you have a really interesting role there because you kind of work on the audio side of things. And as we are going to explore in the podcast, the audio side of what happens at the Olympics with OBS is incredibly exciting. So what's your own specific role in terms of OBS and how it functions with your partners and with the world?
My role is the sound design on the production side. So how we're going to cover the sports, what we want from each sport, according to the production specifications, and the engineering side, design, all the technical side to make that possible, that coverage possible. And then the third pillar is to make this information and discuss this information with all the engineers and mixers involved, because we are talking about more than 300 people.
Wow, that's not a small team, but it kind of makes sense when you think about the scale of the event. But let's come over to yourself, Anaïs. Now, you, of course, are the Director of Broadcast and Content in Europe at Dolby. So my guess is you're very involved in the Olympics, in all these big events. So I'd like to ask you about the evolution of Dolby. And it seems like Dolby Atmos is everywhere these days. Now, we all know it from movies, from music, from motoring, but it's increasingly in the world of sports. So I wonder if we could kick things off by learning about some of the major events you're working with and what should our listeners know about these partnerships?
Dolby Atmos has been growing from cinema to TV to music, extra. And the natural place for TV was live sport. And that's also one of the most valued content for TV channels. Years ago, I think one of the first live trial was with Canal Plus in 2016 on the rugby final from the top 14 final. It was the early days, so we were experimenting what is working when we do surround sound capture and what the type of sound do we have on the top and etc. And it took a few years to refine, and each broadcaster has their own method also on what they like. The taste is varying depending on the countries and the type of ambience. I would say that for English football or Spanish football or German football, you don't have the same type of crowd. So you do different mix. And so since this 2016, it has been growing a lot with football. UEFA is doing a lot of work in Atmos. Olympics also. For the past years, it has been produced in Atmos. And this year was very special because we had in Europe the Euro and the Olympics, both produced in Atmos and distributed by a few broadcasters.
Wow. Absolutely. Well, as a proud Irishman there, I, smiled when you mentioned the rugby. That's absolutely brilliant. And also it's very interesting that you say Spanish football fans and German football fans and English football fans get a different mix and different content. So this is, a whole can of worms opening. We will come back to some of these themes, but these are massive events. You're talking about UEFA, you're talking about the Olympics, some of the most prestigious sporting events in the world ever. So it is really a big deal to be partnering on a global scale with these organisations. I would love to know from you, Anaïs, what kind of feedback have you been getting on both sides of the equation? So what are the sports fans have been saying and what are the broadcasters have been saying?
So the feedback are generally great because people feel more involved in what they are watching. You get a better sense of reality of being there with the immersive experience because you have more proof point on what is happening. And even if you build a mix sometime more creatively and a bit different than what exists for the public behind a TV or soundbar or home theater, they have more separation between the sounds and they can both hear the commentary and the ambience without one taking on the other. There is also all the cheering of the crowd, especially in sports like football. But in a sport like tennis, we have done experiments on Roland Garros for many years. You can also hear the reverberation in the court, which is very special with tennis. You have those quiet moments where you just hear the hit of the ball and the scream of the players and all that reverberation of the court. That's I love it. I find it very relaxing in Atmos. So broadcasters find it in the end very natural to mix in Atmos, and the public likes it because it's a comfort and a realism that they get at home.
Oh yeah, you can hear every drop of sweat falling on the centre court there for those incredible tennis finals. That's amazing. So this kind of technology really puts people at the heart of the event, right in the centre court, right in the Olympic stadiums. But Nuno, you mentioned that you need quite a lot of audio engineers to deliver this. How many engineers did you mention?
Well, just to have an idea, in these games, Paris, we had 73 productions running at the same time. So we have 73 audio control rooms that we do it immersive audio, discrete. We do it stereo and 5.1.4 because we still have many broadcasters producing in stereo. And we avoid using down mixes as much as possible. But why 73? Because, for example, in gymnastics, we are doing 7 productions. So from each apparatus, we have 7 productions. Athletics, we have as well 7 productions. Table tennis, we have 4 productions. One of the difficulties is, for example, table tennis, that we have 4 productions. When we change from table 1 to table 4, the ambient sound, the background, immersive or in stereo, have to be similar, okay? Have to be the same. Or in athletics, when we have 7 productions, we cannot change from track to long jumps, and we look that they are in a different stadium. All this needs to fit, and we have a common point that is Olympic QC that is prepared technologically ready for monitoring in detail all these immersive sounds and to make sure that all these different 36 different sports venues looks the same production. But in the Olympics, we have 33 different sports. Beach volleyball, they have a completely dynamic sound different from tennis, Beach volleyball, we have all the PA and the cheering all the time. And tennis, we have all these pauses during the points. But for us, all the loudness, all the sounds needs to look like the same production. And that's one of our challenges.
Nuno, these are amazing numbers, just staggering. But talk to us about when you moved from just stereo to also adding 5.1.4. Did you have to add a lot of engineering staff to make this happen?
One of the goals of OBS when we start starting to do the immersive is do not create impact on the production, because then related costs, technical complexity, we move it from stereo or 5.1 to immersive without have any impact besides 4 more channels on the signal flow and more speakers, of course. We didn't increase the number of engineers because we are doing immersive. So at the moment we had, like I said, 73 engineers by production unit, but we had some shifts. Why? Because, for example, basketball, we start from 8 a.m. to midnight. We don't have one match for venue. We have long hours of teams. So we need to have long and many shifts and many days. Remember that some of the sports are the 2 full weeks of the games. We need to train many people.
That is amazing. And what are some of the viewing figures that our listeners might have heard mentioned in news articles in terms of the kind of quantities of people who actually tune into the Olympics every time? I mean, we're talking an enormous number of viewers.
The reports we are having, the audience of these games increased. It had a huge increase, not only in Europe, but also in the United States, increased a lot.
Wow. Very good. Anaïs, do you have any visibility of the viewership of the Olympic Games? Because it is obviously an enormous number of people tuning in.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know how many millions or billions are watching the games. We try to count how many will receive Atmos. And there are more than 100 million households who receive the Atmos signal, probably much more. It's difficult to count. But yeah, for the Olympics in general, that's very wide. And some continents are very fond of it, like the US.
I want to give you a number that is impressive. OBS produced 11,000 hours of content.
11,000 hours of content.
Just to have an idea, to compare with a World Cup. A World Cup is 200 hours.
That is mind-blowing, because we all know the World Cup, the number of games, the rounds, and wow, that's just, my mind is melting here, Nuno. You know, you mentioned that you didn't necessarily need to upscale the number of engineers that you use because you're able to use smart new technology. You've bolted on 5.1.4 together with the stereo, and you're delivering these 11,000 hours of content. For the techies tuning in, we do have a fair number of listeners who are, you know, audio engineers, etc. What kind of technology, Nuno, do you and the team use to make this happen?
We use our immersive audio Atmos then based on sound design. So the way that we design the sounds to capture with the ambient microphones, we design proper microphones for that. And because we have a wide range of sports, we have indoor sports, outdoor sports, box sports, online sports. And when I say online, is for example, beach volleyball or road cycling, different environments that we need to cover all the same. So all of them are stereo and immersive. Okay. And there is no exceptions. And some of them we had to learn how to do it, because for us, box sports like football, many people have experience, along these years. It's quite, I don't say easy, but they are the easiest ones because it's a lot of case studies and people have experience. But how you do it in marathon, how you do it in marathon swimming, how you do it in canoe kayak, So we had to learn since our first experience in 2014. We had to learn and go to the point to design microphones.
Amazing. So you actually not only kind of had to build your own technical infrastructure, but you had to build your own microphones because these are completely new scenarios for broadcast. Incredible. That is utterly fascinating. And for the folks tuning in, I would recommend, if you want to get deep into the tech behind this, Nuno published a fantastic white paper with the good people over at IBC, which is worth finding out because it goes into a lot of the details behind these big, massive scale surround broadcast challenges. And it really is an excellent read. So Anaïs, coming over to yourself, I bet your technical team have been very busy with such massive projects as well. What are some of the challenges that they've had to meet and deliver?
Excellent question. So we have been busy, especially working with the broadcasters that were taking the Atmos signal and distributing it, because each broadcaster can choose what they get and what they distribute. So even though they get Atmos, they don't always distribute in Atmos. And that's what we are there for, push them to do it, because that's easy. But then there have been a few innovative projects. In Europe, we had both Spain, RTV in Spain, and France Television in France that were using the Atmos feed and distributing in AC4, which is a new codec. That's a new standard for broadcast, and especially here, free-to-air TV. In that codec, you can have the standard immersive experience, but you can also have a personalization of the audio experience. You have the ambience and the commentator, which are separated, and you can choose a level to mix them, or you can even choose different commentators. In the case of Olympics, France TV didn't propose different commentators. That's editorial choices, but they could. You could also even remove the commentator. You could provide different type of ambiances if you want. So a lot of possibilities. And with a new codec comes also new technical workflows. So in their case, they chose to develop a new way of contributing the audio, which was PCM plus serial ADM metadata. So I'm maybe not going too deep into that. That's a new way to enable more flexibility in the audio experiences. That was a great proof point for us. And that's the beginning of a new story in audio for consumers. We hope so.
Oh, for sure. This is super interesting. So the listeners at home watching the Olympics on, their finest big Samsung flat screen TV, Dolby Atmos sound, they can actually leverage the power of AC4 to, mute the commentator, choose a different commentator, change the atmosphere. This is huge, absolutely huge. So talk to us a bit, Anaïs, about the kind of setup that's required at a sporting event, actually on the ground, in order to support immersive audio. I don't know if you have an example just so our folks can understand what's needed.
So I think Nuno can probably complete what I'm going to say. There's a need to have somewhere to mix and to monitor. So most of the time, this is an OB van, which is equipped with a 514 system. They are very small control rooms, so it's a very small system compared to a studio. You can also eventually do remote production and send a feed that will be mixed somewhere else. That happens in some competitions. Apart from the monitoring, then there is the console that needs to be able to deal with the immersive layer. And in some cases, we also do authoring of metadata like France TV did with some specific processor. So there was a specific processor from Junger developed for that. But this is very flexible. Some may just do plain audio and create the metadata later. It depends on the broadcaster's choices. But at least having something to monitor and then do something with the microphone feeds that have been captured and just create your immersive mix as it sounds good for the sound engineer.
Phenomenal. I mean, you almost make it sound easy there. Nuno, would you like to add anything on to what Anaïs just said?
Well, OBS have, like I said, there's different ways of doing it. OBS option was we do everything discrete on the OB vans. So we have our sound design microphones. We mix it on the truck in a large broadcast console ready for 5.1.4 and stereo. Then we contribute to our master control room. And on the master control room, we deliver to TV stations in baseband, discrete 5.1.4. Then they can encode in Dolby Atmos with all the options that Anaïs was saying now with the AC4. That brings the point here that these options that we tech people are giving for editorial and directing and creative options, that we need to start working with the creative and the editors, because probably they need to be sensitive to this, because like I say, okay, we can have different commentators. Can be much more. And that can make a difference when we're talking about TV rights. It happens on the same country, for example, that a football match or the games are distributed by two different right holders, right holder A and right holder B with the same content. But, a right holder A can choose using AC4 technology, for example, to have English commentator plus the referee's sound. Okay. And then the TV station B can have English commentator, but instead of the referees, offer the coaches, for example. So open here a box of creativity that is behind tech people. Okay. Or even sound people on creativity. I can say that for OBS, for example, we have our mix and we make available a site all the audio splits that the specific microphones or referee microphones, or depending of the federations allowed, or coaches microphones, so that you can enhance your coverage besides the host coverage. This is already happened on the video side. On the video side, we have a service that it's called multi-clip feed. I'm going to be brief to open here a mind of the opportunities that the sound can give with AC4 and these technologies. For example, on the host broadcast, more or less, for if there is a goal in football, for example, that everybody can understand better, we give 2 replays of the goal. But when we're doing the coverage, we have a Obi-Wan with 25 cameras or 30 cameras. So we have cameras, pictures or replays available of that 30 different cameras. So OBS offer for the broadcasters who wanted, instead of only 2 replays that host coverage give, they can have more replays of the goal in the different angles. Okay. That's a service that is editorial option for the broadcaster. So with the sound, we can do the same. We have the host immersive audio mix, but then they can enhance, for example, in a football, if you want to have you are a match, for example, Portugal against France. You have the host broadcast. We are agnostic. Okay. We have balance. But I'm Portuguese. I want to enhance the sound of the Portuguese crowd. So I can add microphones and put on top of the host mix. And AC4, I can choose Portuguese crowd or French crowd. So this opens here another world of creativity that is not only on the side of the host mix.
So this kind of immersive formats, the technology, is actually opening up a whole new world of creativity, new options for the broadcaster, for the end user. And this is moving very quickly. This is not the Olympics I remember watching back in the day on like a mono TV in Dublin. But Nuno, like how much time do you spend just staying on top of all this hot new technology that is transforming how we experience sports? It must be quite a lot of work.
Well, we think that is fast, but our first experience in immersive was 2014 in Sochi. After that, we went with the process to test all the different sound and microphone techniques, all of them, mixing, and then also transport, contribution, distribution, encoding, decoding, etc., etc. To get this point today that I think we are very solid in immersive audio, very, very solid, we took 10 years. So you can imagine that I'm already thinking on the next technology for the next 10 years.
All right. Watch this space, dear listeners. Excellent. Now, speaking of the latest tech, I do like to keep up to date with the latest TLAs or 3-letter acronyms. And Anaïs, I believe there is something called NGA technologies that I should be adding to my vocabulary. Please tell me more.
Well, this is what we were speaking about. This is around AC4 and other formats like AC4. So the pillars of an NGA experience are immersiveness, personalization, accessibility. Yeah, that's it, basically. So that means you can get an immersive experience through it. You can personalize what the listener will get. They also can be an actor in choosing the audio experience. And you have more accessibility features like dialogue enhancement, a way to make the voice heard better, not only if you have hearing issues, but for everyone, and also get a better way of delivering audio description. That's the promises of NGA codecs like AC4. We are trying to make broadcaster own those possibilities and be creative with it, like Nuno was explaining.
Right, so there's some great stuff happening there. We've got NGA, we've got AC4, I believe we've got MPEG-H even. And, you know, we've been hearing about things like ambience only mode and dialogue enhancement and these kind of accessibility options that are just brilliant for all kinds of sports fans. It's really increasing the diversity of sporting audiences. Anaïs, I know this may be a little bit of a cheeky question, but is there anything that we can expect in the future from Dolby that you can mention now?
Yeah, it's always difficult to answer that question. You saw that a technology takes a long time to get established. I think Atmos is 10 years old now, even a little bit more. It's still new for some people. So we still have a lot to develop around Atmos, whether it's through Dolby Digital Plus or AC4, in music, in gaming, in automotive. So we are developing automotive a lot at the moment. And then we need to make sure we have a convergence of all the different experiences and the different application fields. And that is going still to take a lot of time. Make Atmos even easier to experience at home with more flexibility in the equipment. It will still be called Atmos, but that's maybe going to be a different way to experience it.
Okay, that was an intriguing answer for our listeners to be staying tuned to what's happening in the world of Dolby. Thank you very much. So, Nuno, let's come back to yourself. Let's talk about the end user experience. You know, you've obviously been working in this field for a long time. You obviously started around about 10 years ago with the Sochi Olympics, and you have seen what kind of a difference that immersive sound can make for a sports fan. I mean, how would you describe that shift in what the end user, the sports fan, can experience with surround?
First, just to say that I don't agree anymore with express next audio generation, because it's not next, it's already present.
It's already here, right?
So it's, I think the next audio generation, it's much more with artificial intelligence experience that we have been done already in these games. I think that's the real next audio generation. Regarding to your question, definitely, like Anaïs already said before, it's once we experience immersive, you don't want to go back to stereo, okay, in sports. That's definitely true. And also, as Anaïs is saying, and Dolby is very responsible for that, we can having this experience on the user side in much more easy way and in much more different formats. We always remember 15 years ago when we talk about 5.1, oh, now we have to buy 5 speakers and put it on the room. How are we going to do that? Now, today, if you want to have a immersive audio experience, it's quite easy. It's you have from sound bars to speakers, Bluetooth speakers, have TVs. We already have the integrated speakers for the experience. Dolby is very responsible for that, to make this possible on the different formats and different ways to make it arrive home. I don't remember no one that's tried once and go back to mono or to stereo.
No, totally. I mean, that's the proof is in the pudding, as we like to say. And, you know, there's so many cool devices, like you say, the sound bars, like the JBL sound bars, the JBL Authentics, these amazing speakers. I got Dolby Atmos built in, the JBL Tour Pro 3's headphones I've been enjoying recently. How do we find, I don't know if this is possible to see this on your side of things, but how do we see that people are enjoying immersive broadcasts? Do you know that people are using headphones or sound bars or, you know, home cinema systems? Just anecdotally, what are the kind of things that you're coming across there in terms of how people are experiencing this?
I think most of the people just have the TV. So there are plenty of Dolby Atmos enabled TVs now. More than half of the UHD TV sold in countries like Western Europe countries are Dolby Atmos enabled. And then there are an entire range of soundbars from the entry-level prices to very high-end products. Headphones on mobile, I think that's going to come when there are more streaming services enabled with live experiences in Dolby Atmos. But you can already get something pretty decent and very impressive sometimes with headphones, especially the one enabling the head tracking. You get this impression that the sound is moving with your head or is staying where it should be in front of you. And when you're moving your head, you get this impression to be in the same space as the sound. That's improving. And that was part of my previous answer. We keep improving in that field and working with more manufacturers to get better and more easier to set up experiences.
Absolutely. And, you know, there's great technologies like Auracaster coming into the frame. You know, I was in Berlin recently for the previous edition of the Audio Talks podcast, and we learned all about how Auracast is connecting the JBL Tour Pro 3s and, you know, enabling you to kind of experience, you know, with head tracking, that Dolby Atmos experience wherever you are. So this is really exciting stuff. But Anaïs, let's zoom out to talk about the big picture. How do you see the role of immersive audio in sports broadcasting expanding globally?
We'd like to see it as a de facto production format. It doesn't make sense to produce several formats in parallel. You can derive everything from the best one. So even if you need only stereo, you can derive it from the 514. We think that's going to be more and more possible for service provider to do it with the compatibility of devices and networks. Today, there is a lot of Dolby Atmos production in football, in the Olympics, in cricket, it's starting to. So we also want to work with the national leagues of the countries where the service provider want to launch a service. Like in Germany, we have the Bundesliga enabled, the EPL in UK. So we need to carry on with French, Spanish, Portuguese leagues. And we also are interested in developing tennis, the motorsports like F1 and MotoGP that's in high demand. You can do a lot of creative things in the mix. And then wherever a service provider are interested to deliver a sport, we will be there and help it to happen. But I'm confident that also the capture systems are evolving and the OB vans are evolving and the experience of the sound engineer in the field also is increasing. So it will become something easier and easier to adopt and not a blocker. Like we are afraid that it's going to be complicated, extra. We hear less and less those arguments.
Yeah, no doubt. Exciting times ahead. But what would you say, Anaïs, are some of the emerging applications for Dolby Atmos? And, how would you say that Dolby is adapting to that fast-moving, evolving technology landscape?
I think VR, for example, everything VR related. Of course, you need immersiveness in VR, and you also need technology that allows you to move into that immersive space. And then with the autonomous driving developing, then the entertainment experience in the car will be more and more expected by users. So we also get ready to implement Dolby Atmos, but also Dolby Vision, the HDR technology from Dolby in the car space.
Exciting times indeed. And Nuno, talk to us a bit about what's coming up for OBS. I realise that literally at time of recording, you have just finished broadcasting the amazing Paralympics that I'm sure many of our listeners were enjoying. So have you got some time off or are you straight back into work?
No, we've just finished yesterday just 2 days ago, the Paralympics, because OBS also in charge of Paralympics production that was bigger than Winter Games. We had around 2,000 hours of production. So now I need to have a break, but we already, in 14 months, we're going to have the next Winter Olympics in 26 and in January. So we don't have much time to turn around. Like you are asking, what technologies everybody's expecting as well, always. OBS come the latest technologies and the latest improvements. And yes, we are working hard, like I said, a new audio generation that is not immersive audio because for us it's already the present generation.
We're going to call it PGA now, present generation audio.
Present generation audio. We are already working on the next one. We already done some tests, proof of concepts that in the end they'll be on air in these games very, very seriously. And that's going to be our next step, working with the new tools that artificial intelligence give it to us. Has a tool not to replace the human and the creativity, because at the moment is not possible, in my opinion, but is definitely a huge tool, allows us to be focused in other details.
Okay, upwards and onwards. The only way is up, as the song says. That's been absolutely fascinating. That's been a glimpse behind the curtain at what makes the magic happen, how we're all having these immersive audio experiences at home, and how you deliver a massive event that everyone in the world knows about with 11,000 hours of content. That's just been incredible. Thank you both so much. But I do have one more question for you both. And this is something that we ask all of our VIP guests on the podcast. And this is to choose a track for our title playlist. So this can be just one that you like to listen to in the morning. It can be something to inspire you to reach the Olympian peaks of audio innovation, or it could be your favourite jam to listen to on Dolby Atmos. And we're going to start with your good self, Nuno.
Of course, after doing the Olympics, Imagine was the music of the games. I think the new production of the Imagine is the spirit of the Olympic Games.
Well said. What a beautiful choice. Absolutely brilliant, Nuno. Thank you. And over to you, good self, Anaïs.
Well, listen, I have in my head a song from Zao de Sargasson, was a young French singer, and she was part of the opening ceremony, I think. The song is called La Symphonie des Éclairs. It's a very, very French song, but it's not leaving my head.
That's a sign of a good song. Okay, merci beaucoup. That's wonderful. I am going to add to the playlist myself with a very direct association. It's a band from the 1960s called The Olympics, and a wonderful Northern Soul record straight out of Detroit called The Same Old Thing. So thank you both so much for joining us. Merci beaucoup, Anaïs Libolt.
Thank you. Bye.
And obrigado, Nuno Duarte.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Listeners, don't forget to subscribe, comment and share Audio Talks with your friends and family. If you're enjoying the Audio Talks series of podcasts, why not pop over to Apple Podcasts, Spotify or wherever you get your favourite podcasts and leave a nice review. It really does mean a lot, and it helps our new listeners to get to know about the gold medal biting guests we talk to in every episode, like Anaïs and Nuno. For more exclusive content, some behind the scenes goodies and maybe even some competitions, connect with us over on the Instagram. You can find us at Audio Talks Podcast. We'll be back soon for some more epic Audio Talks. See you next time.